Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest iteration of the web series Nature of Predators Book 2. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 17. Memory Transcription Subject, Tassie, Bison Scientist. Date, Standardized Human Time, March 20th, 2160. With my vision obscured by fabric, it was difficult to tell where the Tessier were taking us. It seemed they loaded us onto some sort of vehicle, which rattled along a bumpy road for some time. There was no chance for me to glean anything about the nomads' carefully hidden settlements. If not for Naltor's periodic complaints and the occasional grunt by Dustin, likely from being handled roughly or being jostled around the floor, I wouldn't know my companions were still with me. By the time we reached our apparent destination, I hadn't worked myself down from the panic at all, and I had no more ideas to solve this predicament than I did before. My captors yanked the bag off, revealing where they had taken us. Naltor and I were standing in an observation room, in what appeared to be a silo, one of their nuclear missile silos doubling as a holding cell, perhaps. Rather than peeking at the warhead, we were gazing down at Dustin. The human had been strapped into a chair. Several Tessier guards and scientists were conferring below, inspecting the alien like he was an animal specimen. My features contorted with outrage, eyes wheeling around in search of anyone to berate. I found a calm military officer hovering over a microphone, observing us from his periphery as well. His yellow head feathers were a dull shade, but his body glistened as if he had coated himself in our natural waterproof oil, always ready for a swim. This must be Zulk from the Coast Guard. Dr. Tassie, the familiar voice confirmed my suspicions about his identity. I've obtained permission to brief you on everything related to Starlight incident, and for you to watch our proceedings with your friend. Soon enough, when we question him, you'll see these freaks for exactly what they are. I narrowed my eyes. And what is that? Flawed? Trouble? I'm already aware. No, you're not. They haven't told you what they've done. But don't worry. We'll find out what they're really playing at. Their true intentions for the last man and the rest of us. The audacity of that monster to try and approach us. Naltor struggled against his flip findings. I can tell you what they want. The aliens chose to contact us because of the critical state Irvana is in. They want to introduce us to their union, the Sapient Coalition. Dustin wanted to convince you that he's not a threat, I added. He truly cares, enough that he is willing to die to try and smooth things over. Whatever you think of the feast incident or whatever that thing thinks he can pretend what happened 100 years ago never happened, Zulk spat. We haven't forgotten what they think of bison lives or how the Tessier were singled out. Zulk, what are you talking about? I'm not following. I'll give you the short version. Back in the 2980s, an unidentified flying object crested into the atmosphere above Ulsh. Before we could so much as scramble freighters, they dropped a bomb on one settlement, then another, and a third. Bastards zipped in to admire their flipperwork, arrogant as kale, and we nailed them broadside with a nuclear missile, managed to take the thing down and recover it. The Tessier officer leaned back, after recounting that bombshell story like it was nothing. To say that I was appalled would be a vast understatement. I wasn't sure what I just heard, but none of that casual account computed. Aliens had not just visited Irvana before, long before any of us were born. They attacked Ulsh. What reason could there possibly be to slaughter bisons en masse, beyond our carnivorous diet? There's been no way of knowing for certain whether that was the work of the Federation or the Arxel. Though it didn't make sense why a single ship would unload bombs with no follow-up if it was Federation. Dustin would have mentioned it, given that he'd been open about the fact that they would kill us if it was the Sapient Coalition's predecessor. Then that made it all too real what their intentions would be with the bisons. I need more information to figure out who was responsible for this, and why the Tessier would never tell any other nation about something of that magnitude. That's if it was really aliens and not some Brutalis stealth ship up to no good. That is horrifying. They should have tried to stop FAI from calling to them. Naltor maintained a flummoxed expression. Let me get this straight. Aliens fucking bombed you. You recovered a ship, presumably with extraterrestrial tech and information that could be useful for all of us. That could threaten all of us, and we're only just hearing about this now. What the fuck is wrong with you? The aliens targeted us, and we had a chance to reverse engineer their technology, to get ahead in ways that finally gave us an edge over the Selmore and the Vritala. There was no Lastman back then, only Bisons who'd be happy to turn alien technology against us, Zulk responded. I wish we understood more of the gizmos, but there's so much we don't know. It helped us far surpass our competition in terms of computers and develop advanced spaceflight. So why tell us now, selfish motherfuckers? They could have come back and killed us all at any point. You let us send out probes, which attracted them back. A mistake in hindsight. Look, our plan was to get Bison unity, just like you want now, through strength. But the global war didn't go as planned. If the aliens came back to finish the job, it wouldn't have made a difference if we told any of you or not. However, at this stage, they're up to something, so it might be best that you're playing with a full deck. You don't think we had the right to know the second another species attacked Rana? It wasn't your cities bombed, so no, I don't. In many ways, I imagine it's best to not know. That wasn't your fracking decision to make. This goes far beyond any one nation's. How do you know it was Dustin's people? I blurted. They weren't even spacefaring themselves back then. That human shared a lot about how messed up the galaxy is. A massive war with atrocities and devastation. He was quite open about it, and I got no impressions he knew any of this. You're blaming the wrong aliens. Even if humans didn't pull the trigger themselves, they affiliate with the beings who did. We recovered a few corpses from the wreckage. Zulk fiddled with his tablet before putting up photos of charred, mangled husks being carried out by Bisons in hazmat suits. It was obvious none survived the fiery impact, likely why the Tessia were thrilled at a live specimen like Dustin, but the spikes made them recognizable as Gojits. Does this species look familiar to you, Tassie? I bet they didn't divulge this. I recoiled, uncertain how fervently I should defend the Gojits when I lacked any knowledge of their prior slaughter of bisons. Nudia's species had initiated the attack against Rana. I suppose that made some terrible sense, with what I knew about them attempting to wipe out humans and having their homeworld destroyed as the Terrans tried to stop it. According to the First Contact Party, that Gojit government was long gone. They were now allied to the novel peace-seeking sapient coalition. I wasn't sure that Zulk would care whether the Gojits had reformed, but I did. It also mattered whether genocide was still their intention in the present. Rana needed these visitors to be here on a benevolent mission. He couldn't hold the Gojit sociologist accountable for deeds done under the predator-hating Federation, though I found myself wondering why the bombers hadn't even tried to cure us. Dustin claimed it was standard practice for them to abduct and alter pre-FTL races, and that they would have sought to kill us after failing in that regard. I'd been able to process that claim as hypothetical, but not as a plan once intended to be carried out. Why had their actions against Alsh been so atypical, and why had the Terran not mentioned it? I doubted the coalition was senseless enough to send a Gojit if they knew the Tessia would recognize Nudia's kind. It all seemed odd for the Gojits, who amassed a massive fleets to throw at Earth, to send a single vessel that was shot down and never followed up. I know you think I'm naive, Zulk, but there's zero chance Dustin, or in all likelihood humanity, knows about any of this, I decided. I saw what their kind was put through by the Gojits through media depictions. Humans were attacked by them too. They did tell us about that. If the Gojits had set out to kill you, they would have followed up with the fleet, like they sent against Earth. There has to be a reason it ended with one ship, a rogue vessel of some kind. It's possible. Zulk cast a second glance at the miserable-looking human below. The Gojits attacked his planet, you're saying? Not just them, Naltok commented. Humanity went up against the entire Federation, and Dustin told us they assimilated or neutralized hostile parties, left and right. Other races hated them because of their diet, which was likely their quarrel with us. I beg your pardon? My eyes widened, sensing that Zulk was listening to our words. What we know from Dustin is that the organization humans took down hated anything vaguely predatory. They would have attempted to alter genes and culture. It might also be worth mentioning that the only other obligate carnivores eat people, Both of those things tied into Heliska's breakdown.
And before you start casting aspirations, I believe Dustin is telling the truth, if only because it's too fucking deranged to be made up, Naltor grumbled. The humans seem genuine when trying to be better. Sounds like they had to sort through a mess of lies and cover-ups to have any semblance of truth to return to all foreign peoples.
Dustin might be able to make sense of what happened to Tessia, especially if you have anything left from the Gojid ship to be analyzed. But you have to give him a chance. Earth and Ulsh were in the same position. You're not enemies.
That animal-loving nerd is fucking harmless. He was willing to die for you when I told him you shifty fucks weren't worth it.
Zulk scoffed. Bold of you to say that to me directly.
After you covered up a Herd's damned spaceship and everything you gained from it, I'm more sickened by you than ever. I'm only still engaging with you because Dustin doesn't deserve to be gutted by you savages.
We are not savages. The savages are all around us. Every visitor we ever got from outside world and universe was there to take what was ours. That's enough fighting, I shouted. You want to prove you're no savage, Zoc? Act out of reason and gather all the facts like a scientist. Don't hurt someone who came here to be your friend unless you're 100% sure they're lying. Is that too much to ask? The Tessia Coast Guard officer paced back and forth, studying the military personnel who were guarding the captive human. I could understand their glee at having an alien at their mercy, because of the desire for retribution, especially if they believed the Terrans were teaming up with the people who bombed their continent. If I had failed to persuade Zulk not to associate Dustin with those unspeakable sins and try extracting information in a civilized way, there was nothing I could say that convinced the nomads. I shared everything we knew about the galaxy's bleak past and about the Coalition's fresh start. It was possible the Tessia would never be willing to talk to outsiders, even if Zulk's people had finally spilled the truth to Lysaean visitors. Maybe I was right the first time around about the Tessia just being afraid, terrified that the aliens would swoop back around to finish the job. The Tessia have made terrible decisions that kept them more isolated than ever, but that doesn't mean what was done to them is unspeakable.
Leave it to a Selbo and a scientist to be a bunch of loudpigs, Zulk huffed. You're going to talk me to death, but you paint a convincing picture. I really wish to believe those promises of peace the way you do, Dr. Tassi. Problem is, even if I pause for a minute, do you think my comrades in the leadership will accept me going easy on him?
I drew a shaky breath. You'll regret harming the wrong person more than harming the right one, Zulk. You're calling the shots, so you'll have to live with it. You can always share what you were told, assuming Dustin doesn't convince everyone with his kindness. If you don't want innocent people getting hurt, stop it before it's too late.
I'm not sure about this, but I'll pretend he doesn't know. I'll tell him what I told you and hear what he has to say. No promises beyond that.
Thank you. That's all we can ask for.
Don't thank me yet. If your friend is lying, you're not going to like what I do to him. Come on, follow me down the stairs and we'll see how this all plays out.
Relief washed over my feathers, alongside the still present horror that Bison's true first contact had been a senseless assault. Our captor undid the bindings on our wrists, finally demonstrating some goodwill. I followed Zulk out the rear exit, noticing that he shared some of Naltor's twitchiness on the first day that we spotted the aliens. The Tessia knew of their existence, but none of his kind had ever interacted with extraterrestrials either. The three of us trundled down a set of noisy metal stairs, dismounting near the chair that Dustin was strapped to. His eyes darted over to us, visibly brightening at the sight of his Lysaean friends. The Tessia Coast Guard leader raised his beak to acknowledge his underlings, before walking up to untie the human. The alien looked surprised as he gingerly shook out his wrists.
Tessia, Naltor, Dustin breathed, his voice sounding hoarse. Are you okay?
My stressed heart warmed a little, noting how that was the first thing he asked. We are fine. And you?
I am unharmed, though. I, could really use some water, especially to talk and answer questions.
Zulk reached out to hand him a water flask.
Here you.
Dustin can't drink salt water, I interjected. He doesn't exactly have salt glands in his non-existent beak.
Right. Let me get some fresh water from the faucet, then.
Thank you, Dustin offered.
What is your name?
Zulk. The one I assume you heard on the radio. The Tessia finished filling up a disposable cup from a nearby sink, before giving it to the human, who gulped it down gluttonously.
Now that that's settled, would you happen to know anything about Gojits dropping bombs in Ulch 100 years ago?
Water spewed from Dustin's mouth, with some spurting through his nostrils. There couldn't be a more obvious biological display of shock. General Nolter leapt back, more than a bit disgusted that some of it sprayed all over him. The human coughed and retched, his face turning red as he choked on the water he'd been swallowing. His binocular eyes watered, while he desperately shook his head from side to side in an attempt to communicate. If I recalled correctly from the Terran TV shows and the body language I'd gleaned from the media, that was supposed to convey a negative. I watched as he struggled to clean himself up with his chest fabrics, mopping water off his upper lip. For a moment, I'd been worried about how flushed his cheeks had turned. Zork inspected the xenobiologist with skeptical eyes.
I'll take that as a no. Tassie vouched quite strongly that you didn't know, so perhaps I need to explain. An alien ship bombed 3 of our cities, but we managed to shoot it down and use it for study and growth. Your party member Nulia matches the species we identified via the bodies in the wreckage.
But what? Dustin sputtered. My God, that's how you made that surprise launch, and why you didn't think Bisons would trust us. I don't know what I can possibly say other than I'm sorry, and that I understand the terror of being attacked.
Yes, I'm told you do. But how the feck would you not know one of your own people did something like that?
I highly doubt Nulia did this personally. She wasn't even raised on a Gojit planet, but that's neither here nor there. I'm as shocked and confounded as you are, though I swear I'll do what I can to piece together what happened. What an awful thing to do to an uncontacted species. What can I say for certain is that there is no record of Bisons in the archives, so it wasn't a Federation-sanctioned hit. Nolto raised a flipper, like a kid speaking in his turn in class.
The archives?
The Federation wasn't aware of you. They kept records, no. A changelog of every species they found. Meticulous documentation. I don't know how much you know about them, but something like a predator race being found. That wouldn't have gone under the radar. As for how we don't know this happened, truth be told, Zulk, everything we know about the galaxy's past is either things we've witnessed or based on liberated documents from the archives. I wish I could give you a more satisfying explanation, but I'm giving you the truth.
So you know nothing?
Apart from what the Gojit Union was like, and the fact that they wouldn't have sent one bomber alone. In my opinion, no. I don't, on what little context I've been given. If you have more data on what the ship looked like, I might be able to analyze it, perhaps even against the missing starship registry, which goes back quite far. The ship manifest would tell us who they are. It might be possible to analyze any data that survived the crash, too. We can translate their language. Tassie and Neltor can understand it now as well. There's a second pair of ears to verify what I would tell you.
Just how is that possible?
Translator implants. I'd be happy to share the schematics.
So that's what the metal chips that fused with their skulls in the crash fire were. I can't believe the Lessians let you... Never mind. There was some intact data in the ship, but we haven't been able to decrypt much of it. A few thumbnails from the log files is all.
Sir, why the feck are you telling it this? The soldier spat, seeming to understand Rit, but speaking in Tassia native tongue. I grasped the meaning through the handy translator. You don't actually buy its ignorance, do you? Zulk sighed.
We should hear his side of the story before we reach our judgments. Dustin seems to have intimate knowledge of our enemies, and has yet to avoid any questions.
I understand your anger. 1 billion people were killed on my planet because they didn't like our eyes pointing straight at them. Would you please translate what I just said, Zulk? Dustin waited, while Tassia officer relayed his words. Is there any chance I can see these thumbnails, and perhaps later the crash site? Even just a glimpse of the ship layout might help me tell you if you nabbed a military vessel.
Let's start small. I want to hear your thoughts in real time. Here's the clearest render we obtained, though they were wearing some strange gear.
I circled behind Dustin's chair as Zulk handed him a tablet. The human's eyes inspected the image of a Gojit beneath a metallic suit that seemed similar to what Bisons wore in flammable work environments. Some unwieldy contraption was slung across the figure's back, though I couldn't hazard a guess as to what it was. Something resembling horror flashed in the primate's eyes, suggesting that this garb was enough for him to identify Ultra's bombers. I watched him hand the tablet back to the Tassia officer, and donned the same distraught expression that he had when he told Nalter and I about the Arxor. My heart sank into my chest, not sure how much abominable knowledge I could have weighing on my mind.
I know who your attackers were, or at least who they worked for, Dustin said. This vessel was crewed by exterminators.
Curiosity gleamed in Zolk's eyes, and Tessia leaned forward. As for myself, I heard a faint chime of recognition in my mind. Hadn't Nulia told us Dustin studied animals for an occupation going by that name? Was that why he was distraught learning who was capable? Out of some sense of partiality to the job he started off with, asking him about his former occupation might get him strung up after what he just said. So I kept my questions to myself. Hopefully the human would be able to provide some insight into these exterminators' motives on his own. End of chapter. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.